I was born and raised in Kansas and lived there for 38 years and moved here to Kentucky and been working here at the distillery for 22 years and was a licensed hairdresser, beautician for 15 years in Kansas prior to moving out here. And found a job at the distillery, which I fell in love with and haven't left since.
What brought you to Kentucky?
Long story. I wanted to get out and do new things and go places and see new people and get away from the cold and extreme heat. And Kentucky, that was that for me. And it didn't take long when I moved out here to meet and find new friends. And it's been home for me, and it still is, and probably will be for many years to come.
Tell me a little bit about your parents.
Farmers, row crop farmers, wheat farmers. They're still alive and well today. We celebrated their 65th wedding anniversary 2 years ago, and they're doing well. They're retired. They live in town now, but worked on the farm all their lives. I went to a country school for 8 years, a one-room schoolhouse, one teacher, one room, 8 years. And of course, the little rural high school, it was small too. There was 52 kids in our high school, and 23 of us, the year I graduated, was seniors. So they had high school one more year there when I graduated, and after that, they didn't have high school there anymore. They switched and they unified some school districts. So it was pretty small and pretty uncomplicated in my world up till about 1960. 65, I guess, is when I graduated from high school. So that's when I got out and about and more complicated. Mm-hmm. We rode a horse to school and had a barn at the schoolyard where we kept the horses, kept them fed. The schoolhouse is still there. The barn has fell down. Our outhouses, of course, fell down. Didn't have no indoor plumbing. And we had coal heat. They had an old coal stove in there that we burned coal in to keep warm. First few years, and then it was wood heat. And the last couple of years, they had purchased a propane heater that they used in that one-room schoolhouse. But yeah, them was the days.
What about your parents? Are there some interesting lessons that you learned from your parents when you were growing up?
How to work hard. We worked hard, we played as a family and worked as a family, and that's the way it was. It was a working family.
So you were hard at work on the farm when
Yes.
you were growing up?
Yes. Yep. In my early years, I can remember using horses to work with. And then, of course, through the years, we got tractors and made it a little easier. But they was hard years. They were hard years growing up, working. We didn't have no indoor plumbing. We didn't have no electric when I was real little. I remember studying with coal oil lamps and lantern and candles. And then even when I got older, the electric would go out a lot in the winter and the snow, and we had lots of snowstorms out there in Kansas, lots of tornadoes in Kansas. I can't count on my hands how many tornadoes I've seen. We had a underground tornado shelter we would go in. We'd go in and all sit down there and pray, and when we come out, you never knew if you was going to have a house left or not.
Are you from a large family?
Now, well, there's only 3 of us. I got one sister older, and one sister younger. So there was 3 of us in the family, And the girls, we worked like boys would have worked if we'd had boys in our family. So it didn't make too much difference whether we was boys or girls, we worked.
What interested you as a young person in, say, early teens? What did you think you might do?
Rode horses. I went to a lot of shodeos, rode, and a lot of shodeos, roping and riding and you name it, I did it. I enjoyed riding horses, I really did. Of course, we used horses to herd cattle, to herd our sheep. It wasn't always fun and games on the horses. Everybody always says, oh, wouldn't that have been so fun to grow up riding horses? And well, it was and it wasn't. There was times when you had to ride a horse you didn't really want to, and it was work to have to go out and have to do what you had to do. But yeah, we had fun riding horses also. But there was times it was hard work.
What were your thoughts at that time regarding what you might like to do in your future? Did you have any ideas then?
As a young girl, I always wanted to be a nurse. And a lot of the school system, when I got to high school, didn't teach a lot of the courses that you need in the math end. And after I graduated from high school and I went and took my entrance exam for nurses college, I was going to have to take a few years of college before I could go because I didn't have the prep that I needed in them small schools back then. And I guess I just didn't have the go in me to want to work my way through. And so I went to beautician college at that time, cosmetology school, and became a hairdresser. And when I got out, I opened my own beauty shop and ran my own business successfully for 14, almost 15 years. And I got burned out on it. I worked so many hours and got tired of it and wanted to do and expand and do new things. Worked as a construction worker for a while. I went to welding school. I welded on a nuclear plant there in Kansas at the Wolf Creek Nuclear Power Company. I welded, and I also was a pipe fitter, certified, and I was a carpenter. I helped build bridges for a couple of years, and then I moved to Kentucky. Got tired of some of that hard work, and I come out here and found a job at this distillery. Rolling barrels was just as hard, but I enjoyed it.
So you didn't come to this distillery just for the easy work, I gather?
No, I did not. When they interviewed me, they said, now this is not going to be no easy work. The only work we have for you is you'll be in the warehouse. They were moving barrels from the warehouse to sell some of these warehouses in the back. Said, we're going to be moving barrels, and that's all you're going to be doing is rolling barrels. And I said, there's no work too hard for me. I'd enjoy it. I needed to work. And it looked like fun. And it was fun. It was hard work, but it was fun. We had a good time. Back when the days when I first joined this company, we really had a good time working here. We really did. It was hard work, but it was fun.
So what was it like to be working in a distillery that at that time had reached kind of the bottom of its economic cycle?
It was scary, real scary, because we didn't know for how long it would be open. I mean, it just kept, the top end of management kept going down and down and down. I mean, they kept laying more and more off. Not laying them off, they would lose their jobs. We was down to just bare, minimal people that was working, not just union employees and labor employees, but professional end was going at a constant rate going down. And it was scary for everybody because none of us knew how long we was going to be able to keep our jobs at all. It was a real scary situation. For a lot of years, I'd say it was like that for 10 years or so for me, up until the current situation occurred when Buffalo Trace bought this distillery. That was a big turning point for us out here. Huge turning point.
Let's focus, at least briefly again, on those low years with a few
Okay.
employees and hard times. Any stories from those days that are interesting to remember?
We was putting up new whiskey one year, and it was raining, and we had a barrel truck loaded with barrels, and one of the barrels rolled off the back of the barrel truck. And the rain had been raining. There was puddles of water out there in that back, around some of them back warehouses, where it wasn't always blacktopped. And it was around where the old railroad track went through here and there at the time. And when the barrel truck went over the railroad track, bump and jump, barrel bounced off the back end of there full. Of course, it was clear full, 53 gallons of white dog liquor, fresh out of the still, rolled off and busted out there in that. And it broke right by one of the main water puddles. And we always had there was probably a flock of 5 or 6 ducks out here. They came off the river. They'd come up, and the guards would feed them grain. They ate grain around the granary down here. They was out in them water puddles out there by that distillery that day, or by the warehouse, and I said, oh my, that whiskey all ran right in that water puddle. I said, boy, them ducks are going to have fun now, aren't they? Of course, everybody laughed, and we didn't really think too much about it. And as the day wore on, them ducks got to where they couldn't hold their head up. They was like, their necks was hanging down, and it was like, talk about swan ducks doing a swan dive. They were doing it. It was funny. We all laughed so hard. They was the drunkest ducks I believe I ever saw. Yeah, we enjoyed that. I remember Jules Sorg coming, looking. She was locking up the warehouses that night, and she asked me, what in the world is wrong with them ducks out there? And I said, I think that's where that barrel got spilled. And they got in that, of course, was taking baths in it and drinking it, and they were some drunk ducks. However, it didn't hurt them. They was just fine the next day and ready to eat. So, and I think that's what they was waiting on, is another barrel to run off one of them trucks. About 10 years ago, when Buffalo Trace bought this distillery, everybody was worried. They knew somebody bought us, but we didn't know who had bought us. We didn't know which direction, whether they was going to take us down and just close us out, or buy us and make us better. And when they announced that it was being bought to make us better, we was all like, well, we hope it is. And we hope for the best. And it was for the best. It was the best thing that ever happened to this place, because it's been on the upswing ever since. I've never seen that place do such an immaculate turnaround, from A to Z. I mean, it's from the grounds to the warehouses to the upkeep, the management, everything is just. I can't explain the growth in this place that I've seen. In the bottling lines, the whiskey that goes, the bottling production. I never dreamed I'd ever see production like it's going out of this place as it's going today. Wonderful.
During those down years, what were you doing primarily? Rolling barrels, or did you do other things too? There's only about 4 or 5 jobs out here that I haven't done. I moved all over the distillery. They would have job bids put up for bid. Of course, that's on the union job bid program, but
I've been on a lot of the jobs. There isn't too many jobs that I didn't do. Most of the jobs, a lot of the jobs, some of the girls had never ever done out here before. Now, there was a lot of girls that had rolled barrels, but when I bid on, let's see, they give me a job in the dry house at one time, loading trucks. I didn't bid on that one. They give me that one. That one was a hard one. And
could you explain what the dry house is?
well, it was where we dried the grain from the after it was distilled in the mash, and they had squeezed everything out of it, and the dried grain, we would put it in the dryers. They would coat it, and we'd resell it for cattle feed, hog feed, and it would lay on the feed house on a floor up here. And at the time, we had no way of loading the trucks except by hand with shovels and scoops. They used coal buckets, they called them, these big coal like wheelbarrows that we used, and would load them and take them and put them out a chute out onto the truck, out onto they had all sizes trucks. They had some of them were semis, some of them was just regular farm-sized trucks, but they sold grain from, and they still do. Makes it pretty self-sufficient in the distillery end. But yeah, I worked over there in the distillery and did all them things too. All them things was different and it was fun, and you work from one end of the distillery to the other, and you can get to working on one end and the other end seems like it's not even a part of the same distillery. You can work there and not see people that you work with. You might not see them for a year or two unless you see them at the company parties or at the Christmas parties. It's like, this is a whole, there's a lot of worlds out here. A lot of different worlds. I bid on processing. I was the first girl that ever was a processor out here. Bid on product handler. There had never been another girl that had been product handler before until I had, and they was always like, are you sure you can do it? If it can be done, I'll do it. And I've done it, and I enjoyed it. I really did. I processed for a lot of years up in Blanton at our premium bottling hall. It's still the best place to be to work in, I think. I enjoy the premium bottling. Meet a lot of nice, wonderful people coming through there.
Can you explain to us what processing means?
Well, there's 2 or 3 different places where you process out here, and processing would mean to different people different things. In the premium bottling house, it would mean dumping 1 barrel at a time in a bottling trough and putting it in a tank and proofing it to see what proof it is, and gauging it to see how many gallons are in that barrel. And then you would cut it with limestone water, and then we chill filter to take all the fatty acids and stuff out and all the impurities that are in the alcohol. And when it's clean and when the lab okays it, we would reheat it, run it into the tank to be finalized before we get ready to bottle it. And then we would finalize it and cut it to the exact proof with limestone water. While it was filtering, we would cut it down to within 2 or 3 tenths of the exact proof, because when you're filtering it, it will take some proof off of it. The agitation system in it will lower the proof of it a little bit. So there's some that will come off. So you don't want to cut it too low because you can't bring it up. Once it's too low, you can't bring it back. You can always take it down, but you can't bring it back up. Especially with a single barrel bourbon. With the other bourbon, say like if it was in the main bottling hall and there was some that was say it's a little bit low, it isn't single barrel, you could put more of the same batch with it to raise it. But on single barrel, it's a little bit tougher because you can't add nothing to a single barrel. It has to be right the first time, or it doesn't cut. If it didn't get cut the first time right, it's not going to the next time either. So a little bit harder to do the premium bourbons up there.
So let's think about all of the positions you've held here, some of which you've already mentioned: barrel handling, processing, which we just discussed,
Right.
drying the grain after it's come out of the still. What else?
Well, like I said, product handling, making sure the right product goes on the lines. We have many different products running. Of course now, especially when we've got all the lines running, you have to know which line's running which product and hook the right lines to make sure the right product's going on the right line. And that's a pretty important job too. And I've been a taster for years out here. And that's a pretty important job. It's a good job. You get to taste a lot of the good bourbons. A very important job though too. I mean, it's a serious job to make sure that the quality's there, because they're not all to be selected for the very best.
Tell me a little bit about the tasting procedure. Who participates? How often do you do it?
Well, they'll use you as much as you can be used. You can't do it every day, or your taste buds would, of course, be ruined. But you can do it 2 or 3 days a week, and of course it depends on how much you're there to do it them days. But they don't overuse you, and you could be overused. Like I said, your taste buds do tell the story of it, but they conduct taste tests up in the lab, and there's a panel of them that go up and taste all the single barrels. Elmer T. Lee usually selects most all of his own barrels for his Elmer T. Lee stock. And of course they have other ones that help him do that also, but he mainly selects his own, and always has. Elmer has been an awfully big help to me out here over the years. Anytime I ever needed any help or understanding on filtering, or why does this do that, or why do we have to do this to make it this, Elmer's always been there for me. I could call Elmer and say, Elmer, why am I doing this? And Elmer would say, well, what do you want to know? I would ask him, and he would always have the right answers, and he would tell me. And Elmer and I always have got along. We kind of clicked. Elmer's the same age as my father, and I guess maybe that's what him and I clicked pretty good together. And I always enjoy when Elmer comes in and visits. I don't think there's a time I've visited with Elmer that I didn't learn something. He was a man that's taught me a lot of things about bourbon.
Any stories about Elmer?
No, not really. Not really. We've had a lot of fun together. We've went and done a lot of how do I want to say this, talks together. We've went down here, and when they would have the expo, Elmer and I went down here several times and talked, and I would always be nervous, and I'd say, oh, Elmer, I don't know if I can do this or not. What if I don't know what they're going to ask me? What am I going to say? Elmer would say, don't worry about it. I'll help you. He said, just make it up. It don't make any difference. I'd say, oh, Elmer, I can't do that. And he'd just laugh, and he'd say, I'll be right there beside you. If they ask you something you don't know, I'll take it up. And I'd say, you're going to have to probably do most of it. I probably won't know what they're asking. He'll say, yeah, you do. I've taught you all you know what to say. But yeah, Elmer, he is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to bourbon and the things out here. He's a pretty good master distiller, and I learned a whole lot from him. Probably most everything I know come from Elmer.
Any secrets to good bourbon production that you've picked up over the years?
Oh, not really. Not really. Can't leave out our secrets.
Oh, don't worry.
You can't leave this. You can't tell the stories about those good sweet barrels and those good barrels. Those are secrets that have to stay. Them sugar barrels, they have to stay where they're at.
Tell me about sugar barrels.
Yeah, how about that?
What is a sugar barrel?
They're sweeter. They're just sweeter barrels than some of the rest of them. And believe me, if you've ever worked in a warehouse, the warehouseman will tell you they know where the sugar barrels are. They just do.
And what happens to those sugar barrels?
They get sipped on. I know that. But yeah, what happens to them mostly they end up as Elmer T. Lee barrels, or some of the private. They're the best premium bourbon barrels. They really are, because they are a little bit sweeter and they're just a little bit better. It's strange what you can have two barrels sitting right side by side, and this one's going to be better, and this one's not going to be quite what this one is. It's strange how it happens, but it does happen.
Is it up to the tasting panel to decide?
Yes. The tasting panel does. They'll take a sample out of each barrel on a rick. They go in and then we drill samples and catch it in a little 50 ml bottle and take it up to the lab, and it's labeled exactly what barrel it is, what rick it come off of, and they will sample it, and they know. You can taste them. I mean, they know exactly where some of the best ones are, and over the years, most of the sugar barrels come from the same spot in the same place in the same houses on the same floors. They know where they're at. That doesn't always hold true. I mean, there's always the exceptions to the rule, but generally they know where their sugar barrels are coming from and where the best spots for them are. I suppose with the heat and the cooling of the warehouses and where the sun shines in from the sunlight, it all plays a big part in the bourbon process.
When you're on the tasting panel, how many members of the panel typically serve at once, and how many barrels do you typically sample?
That I'm not real sure, because we'll go up there at different times. Generally, on say a marriage of Buffalo Trace, there's 8 or 9 of us that'll go taste, and it has to pass everybody. Everybody has to pass it. If just one person says something's not right, they have to retaste and redo the whole batch that they've dumped, and they won't let it go. If one person says it's just not the way it should be, so it has to go through a pretty rigorous test before it gets put out to ever be released for Buffalo Trace or for anything, for all that matters. I mean, Elmer, I'm not sure. I think Elmer pretty much picks his own. I don't know how many. You'd have to ask on that one. That one I don't know. But for Blanton, it's the same way. It's not just they'll get different tasters. They get different tasters to come up at different times. They'll call and say, we need some more tasters to come up and taste some more barrels. And I'm not real sure how many they get to. I'd say 8 or 9 probably on the Blanton barrels too. I'm not real sure how that runs, but I do know on their Buffalo Trace they have certain ones, and they have to all agree on the taster. It doesn't get bottled.
Tell me a little bit about what you're doing now at the distillery, your current job.
Currently I'm a team leader in Blanton Bottling Hall.
How long have you had that position as being one of the supervisors in the bottling hall?
Going on for almost 5 years.
And is that a position you like, or is there?
Oh yeah, I love it. I enjoy it because I'm over about everything that I've done. I've done everything in Blanton. I used to work on the lines a lot up there. I was on the hand bottling line, putting labels on, and I've done all the jobs in there. I think it helps when you've done all the jobs, when you've actually had a hands-on experience. It helps you with the people that you're working with to explain to them or help them if they've got problems with what they're doing. It helps to know you've actually been there and done what they're doing. And when they've got major complaints or whatever, you can more or less deal with them a little easier because you've had hands-on experience and know what they're talking about. I started out there, I guess to back up this whole thing a little bit, in Blanton we started in that little one in the Weller building, and we did 1 barrel a day at tops. And at one point we wasn't even doing 1 barrel a day. We'd get like maybe 30 cases out, and there was 4 or 5 of us women up there working, and we had the old filler, like we filled each bottle by hand, and we had the old eyedropper. If it got too full, you'd have to eyedropper so much out and put it back in another bottle, or put some in to make it just right. And where we've got the vacuum filler now, that vacuum fill, and every one of them, they fill 5 at a time, and they're all just perfect. But back when I started doing it, it was hands-on, and the waxers was the same way, the corker was the same way. We pushed them in, and we hammered them in, or whatever, and the waxers didn't have no little turntables on like they're turning them now. We turned them by hand, and we used to laugh. All of us have got scars on our hands where the wax used to come over and burn your hands. And we'd always say, if they said they'd worked in Blanton, we'd say, let me see your hands, we'll tell if you've worked in Blanton or not. If you don't have scars on your hands, you didn't used to, we knew that they didn't work in Blanton. There's not too many of us left. I think there's only 3 of us up there that's got scars on our hands yet from working in Blantons over the years. But yeah, they took that out because it was a health bad. I mean, that wax is hot, and boy, would it burn. We kept a pot of aloe vera growing by the window, and every time somebody would get wax on them, we'd get the aloe vera and pop it, put it on you. That old pot of aloe vera grew up there for a long, long time. I guess that would be another little story that, it was one of the old ways of curing a burn, but it did its job. Of course, safety issues got in the way then, and we had to start doing a little different. We had the collars that they put on now that keep your hands, and of course they wear gloves now. So it makes it a whole lot different.
So you've bottled Blantons and you have the scars to prove it.
That's right. Yeah.
You've been here at the distillery now for many years. You've seen it through the bad times and the good. How would you say the work environment for employees in general has changed over the last decade or more?
The environment is wonderful. I mean, it's a much better environment than it was. Not that I don't want to get that wrong. Because we've always had fun working out here. The fun end of it, we've always had fun. But the working environment to make it much prettier and safer and nicer is 100% better than it was. It used to be pretty rugged. I mean, there was none of these safety things come up that much. You just kind of had to watch yourself and take care of yourself when it come to safety. They didn't have a lot of safety issues. It was pretty much you took care of your safety and of yourself. If you wanted to stay well and keep yourself well, you know how to do it. But of course, now on the safety end, they've got a lot of safety issues and measures in place to keep the workplace safe. Not that they didn't have then, but it wasn't as severe as it is now. And of course, there wasn't as many people as there are. But, it's made a 200% turnaround in the 22 years I've been here. Just completely. I can't begin to explain what a big turnaround this place has made and how much better it is to work here.
What about this distillery as a work environment for women? You are involved in what could be described as non-traditional type work for women. How has that worked out for you, and how has it changed with time?
There was days it was tough. There was days when you're a woman working in a man's world, you have to prove yourself. Sometimes the men feel like if you're going to do your job, if you're going to do our job, do it. And then there was days when the men would help you. Look, we'll help you. We'll help do it. But generally, they would be like, if you're wanting to work in a man's world, give it all you got. We're willing to help you if you'll do your share. And that's the way I look at it. I haven't seen a man out here that wouldn't help a woman do anything. As long as she does her fair share, they're willing to help you. And they'll do their fair share. So as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to that, I've had good luck with, I've enjoyed working with all the guys out here that I've worked with. But I think out here, and pretty much in any job that I've ever had, working and some of the jobs I've done have been really masculine jobs, and I've had to work. But like I said, my experience, as long as you do your job, they'll help you do it. And I guess that the story went in the warehouse that I was a woman wrestler. And when I found that out, I really had to laugh. I said, oh, that couldn't be any further from the truth. In all my life, I've never wrestled. No. I guess I don't know whether it was just that old farm work that the strength that I had as a woman, they just hadn't seen that, I guess, maybe in a lot of women. And they had, it got out that I was a woman wrestler, but I never was. I never did do that. And I wasn't from Cincinnati. I only lived there about 2 months before I moved here. So they had that kind of wrong, and a lot of them laugh and tease me about me being a woman wrestler from Cincinnati.
What else interests you in life?
I like to camp. I like to go camping. I want to retire in Arizona someday. I got a daughter that lives there, 2 grandchildren, and a son-in-law, and I would love to go there. I'd be there today if I could retire. But it's a little ways, a little far off for that right now. But yeah, I enjoy the warm, the heat.
Someday, I'm sure they will write another history of this distillery. Perhaps your name will be mentioned. What would you like to have someone say about you, your time here?
Oh, that's a tough one. I really don't know. I really don't know. I wouldn't know what to say about that. As long as they left the lady wrestler out, maybe I'd be.
Do you drink bourbon at all yourself?
Oh yeah. I drink bourbon. I like bourbon. I drank more bourbon when I lived in Kansas than I did after I moved here. But I can tell you one thing I was really surprised at is I used to say, there's no way they keep that bourbon around all them years. They don't. 10 years old, 12 years old, how do they know? And when I actually came out here and went to work and actually seen how they really did keep track of it and how the federal government keeps track of it and how the tax system works, my eyes got really open to a whole different world. I mean, it was a learning experience, and it has been ever since. I think I learned something every day I come to work out here. There's very few days I don't go home without learning something from this distillery. And I guess that's what keeps me from not getting tired of my job out here. As long as I keep learning, that's the way I like it. If my mind gets idle, I like to keep learning new things and learning. And like I said, I learn something more every day out here. And the tourists that come through our bottling house up there, I learn stuff from them every day, and they ask me all kinds of questions up there. Every day we look forward to the tourists coming through.
What's your favorite bourbon?
I enjoy Buffalo Trace. Don't think I don't. But my favorite is Van Winkle. I'll have to say, 20-year-old Van Winkle. I love that. Pocketbook, can't handle it, but I like it. Would be my favorite bourbon. If I was going to drink bourbon all the time, that would probably be my favorite bourbon. It's a sweeter bourbon. I don't know if it's because I like the more wheated bourbons. Maybe it's because I'm a wheat farmer from Kansas. Maybe that's got something to do with it. I don't know. But I do like the sweeter bourbon. It just tastes better. I don't know if anybody's ever told you about all the ghosts we've got up here in Blanton Hall and in the bottling house, have they?
No, perhaps you should tell us about those.
You haven't never heard about the ghosts?
I'm not sure I have.
Well, they've got them. And I used to process out here at night up there in Blanton, and you could hear noises. Our break room used to be where the clubhouse, or where the gift shop is. You go over there and sit on break, and it'd be real quiet, and there'd be nobody out here except me and the guard sitting at the guard gate up there. And you could hear footsteps upstairs. And I'd look out, and the guard was there, and I'd wave, and he'd wave back, and he'd come down, and he'd say, "What is it, Marsha?" And I'd say, "Listen. Our ghost is at it again, aren't they?" "Yeah, the ghost is at it again." They always say Colonel Blanton's up there walking around, and I truly believe he is some days. It can be real quiet, and you can hear things going on. It's like, okay. Glad to know you're there.